Salut tout le monde! Je m'appelle Nicole Sainde. That's all I got. God. As you can tell, I'm back in Montreal after my 4-month internship at IBM, and I'm really excited to share with you guys how I landed an internship at IBM. I've been asked all the questions. Did I have a referral? Was I recruited? And I'm going to answer those questions in today's video. Before I get into it though, I would appreciate if you subscribe, like, share, comment, do all the things. My goal is to get to 1,000 subscribers like yesterday. So subscribe. So let's get into it. I was in Toronto with IBM as a software developer intern under the Extreme Blue internship program. And this is IBM's premier internship program. Honestly, it lived up to the name. But this is not an internship promotional video. What I really want to do today is tell you guys how to land an internship with IBM with no referral and no recruiter in your DMs. Because that was my experience. I got this internship 100% by myself, organically, and I did this with some key strategies given my background in computer science, and my overall goal was to maximize my chances of my internship being seen. Some of you may know that I am part of the inaugural cohort of McCall-McBain Scholars here at McGill, and through the scholarship program, I was connected with 2 key individuals. One is a Canadian businessman, he's on the board for Twitter, and the other is a senior director of engineering at DoorDash. They both suggested that I do an internship to beef up my resume. My resume is very academia heavy, and I was starting to get concerned about what my goals were in terms of, do I want to do a PhD after my master's, just focus on like academia, or do I want to do more industry? That was my dilemma. An internship is the best way to get a feel of what you like, essentially. In December of 2021, I decided to do a full-on hunt for internships. And when I say a hunt, I mean a hunt. Because if you're not familiar with the internship recruitment cycle, December is pretty late. You want to be applying like right now. September to November latest is that key period for landing internships. But I decided that there has to be something out there. So let me walk you through my strategy. The first step was to beef up my resume, both in aesthetics, but also formatting. And we'll get into this later. So I spent about a day and a half pruning things from my resume, adding some key elements, spicing up the language, and making it more aesthetically impactful. And then I went to LinkedIn. Honestly, I think LinkedIn is the premier, I'm trying to think of the others. I can't. LinkedIn is the premier platform for finding jobs, networking, you name it. So I went over to LinkedIn and I started looking for internships. My first strategy was to only apply to internships that were just posted. And my cutoff was 2 days. If the job listing was posted more than 2 days, I wasn't going to apply. And the reason why was because I wanted to curate each of my resumes for the job and have the highest chance of my resume being seen. When applying for jobs at these big companies that are hiring on a rolling basis, the applications start to grow exponentially. And I didn't want to just be another resume in the stack. My goal was to be in that key spot of the first 5 to 12 hours. And so when I went on LinkedIn, I saw the IBM Extreme Blue internship and it was posted like 4 hours ago. I was like, bet. I'm gonna apply. I spent at least 3 hours on this resume. My second tip is to really curate the resume for that specific job. Especially in tech jobs, there's so much competition. I wanted to make sure I stood out, and I wanted to make sure that my resume wasn't one that would be easily weeded. So if you didn't know, a lot of big tech companies will use softwares that will scan your resume and decide whether they should move on with your candidacy. Here's how these resume scanners generally work. They use a combination of natural language processing and machine learning to give you a score, let's say between 0 and 1, of how good of a candidate you are. For each resume that's scanned, they'll use NLP to extract the key information from the resume. And then they'll use machine learning algorithms to predict how good of a candidate you are. In other words, to determine how good of a match you are according to their requirements. And this will often be a score between 0 and 1, 0 being not likely to be an ideal candidate and 1 being likely to be an ideal candidate. And you want to score closer to 1 so that your resume can pass through the next stage and get viewed by the hiring manager. So the question then becomes, how do you make a resume that passes the test? Here's how I did it. I read that job description. That job listing has almost everything you need to be a good candidate. The first thing that I do is make sure that the skills that are highlighted in my resume match the requirements that are highlighted in the job description. They'll say things like can code in Python, Java, C++, has knowledge of APIs, or perhaps has some experience with GitHub workflows. The information is there. And the reason why it's important to have these keywords highlighted in my resume is because the machine learning algorithms behind these resume scanning softwares generate a confidence score based on the job description that is provided by the hiring manager. If the hiring manager says, please tell me which of the 500 candidates best match the following requirements, and I have on my resume that I know Python, I have experience with GitHub, I have back-end and front-end experience, and I've worked in agile environments, then I'm more likely to score higher, closer to 1, and have my resume advance to the next stage of the hiring process. It's important to note that I only took keywords that I actually knew how to do. So I was not going to say that I have experience, what don't I have experience in? Building websites. If the job description said, has experience building websites, I would not put that. What I might do though, is put under my interest, interested in learning web development or currently learning JavaScript. So the keyword is still there, but I'm still being honest and keeping my integrity and giving myself the best chance of advancing, like I said. In addition to these keywords, I made sure that my formatting was on point. Sometimes when resumes are scanned, not all the information is extracted. Let me give you a good example. Have you ever uploaded your resume to Workday and then they take you to another page where you have to then go and fill in parts of your resume and you're like, damn, I just uploaded my resume. Here's why they do it. Resumes have different formatting and are not in simple paragraph format, so they want to make sure that everything that is in the resume is in the system. This can sometimes happen when your resume is scanned by these softwares. The only difference is that you don't have a chance to edit it. It's important to make sure that your resume is readable. I opted for the least complex formatting. No extra stuff. I had 2 column text boxes and I put all my information as such. And when I tested this on a website, everything came up and I was good to go. It is so important to have a readable resume. You can have all the keywords in there, but if they don't actually get picked up by the NLP and it doesn't go into the machine learning algorithm for scoring, then it's not getting considered in that stage. So far, I've covered 2 things. The first is applying early, and the second is creating a resume that can pass the scanning test. Now I'm going to talk about reaching out to hiring managers. So the next thing I did was look for recruiters at IBM, and all I did was use the search bar, and I put different combinations of IBM recruiter, HR manager, extreme blue internship recruiter, and as the results got closer and closer to what I was looking for, I started to send them DMs via LinkedIn. Hi, my name is Nicole. I'm a master's student at McGill, and I'm interested in the Extreme Blue internship. I would love to connect with you to hear more about this program and see how I can contribute to the team. Looking forward to hearing from you. Done. Short, simple, to the point. Sometimes I would hear back, often I wouldn't, but the few times that I did hear back, I get really great responses. In fact, one response actually gave me an email of someone that was directly working on this team, and they actually got back to me, gave me a ton of information about the Extreme Blue internship and other internships that I ended up applying to. And it was funny because when I now got to IBM, I recognized her and I was like, hey, I remember seeing your post about the Extreme Blue internship. Because I don't have a referral or any connections, it was just really important for me to get in the know, see what's happening, connect with them. And recruiters are actually really nice. Networking is key. And that's another thing about using LinkedIn, is that hiring managers and recruiters often make posts about their opening, then it's just easy, but they did not give me any instant internship. My goal was just to get my name out there. And when they see a Nicole Asinde on the resume stack, they'll be like, oh, I remember speaking to her. I was confident that once my resume was seen, I'd be called for an interview. Just 3 days after I applied, I got a notification that a hiring manager has looked at my resume, and about a week after that, I was contacted for an interview. In total, I had 3 interviews. The first interview was the screening behavioral interview. That was the general questions about my strengths, about my experience, and really just digging into my resume. That's why it's really important to only put information that you can speak about. The interview was very personalized, and it gave me an opportunity to just speak about my interests. Typically, they would get back to candidates a few days later informing them of whether they've advanced to the next round of interviews. But the hiring manager let me know right there that I'd be advancing to the next stage of the interviews. Stage 2 of the interviews was the technical interview. I had about a week, maybe 2 weeks before my next interview. Was it even up to 2 weeks? I think it was a week. I had about a week. Generally with internships, the idea is that you've been preparing for interviews, you've been studying, but I hadn't been studying. No, that was not my experience, because again, I only really started thinking of doing an internship in December, and I heard back from IBM pretty quickly. I knew I was not going to be doing a whole bunch of elite code questions. That typically stresses me out, and I just didn't have the time. And it was like around that New Year, was it New Year's? Yeah, it was around that New Year's period, like January. Anyways, I didn't want to do any elite code questions. I didn't want to spend my time stressing myself out. I wanted to study things that had the best chance of showing up in my interviews. I went to Reddit, Glassdoor, I typed interview questions for IBM internship. Of the sources that I went to, Glassdoor was the most specific, or Glassdoor was the most correct. Almost, not to the T, but I would say that IBM asked very specific questions, and I got those questions. Am I allowed to say that? And I did a combination of two things. I went over all of the easy, typical questions, because it's always those ones that stump you up. I'm the type of person that I'll spend so much time working on questions that are super hard and forgetting that I need the basics. Fibonacci numbers, palindromes, all the basic stuff. And then I spend other days just going over concepts. I'm the kind of learner that I need to understand the concepts first. There's some people who can just do questions and get the concepts as they go, but I actually do better when I understand the concept, and then I can just work my way through questions. So I spent my time going over tutorials on YouTube of concepts on dynamic programming, multiprocessing, and I did not even bother to do questions on that because I didn't have time. I figured either I know the question or I talk the question through. And that's what I do in interviews. Sometimes I go to an interview and I don't know jack shit about what they're talking about, but I'm able to talk my way through the interview that it makes it seem like I do. Like, you ask me a question that I have no idea about, and I'll say, well, it sounds like you're asking me to do this, and that this is just me repeating what they said. And when I break this down, the first step is, what kind of problem is this? I literally do the whole narration. When Nicole does not know what she's talking about, Nicole just, like, I'm naturally a rambler, so like, I feel like it just works out. I felt comfortable not going through every single question as long as I knew the concepts and I had the basic ideas. A lot of these tutorials, they go through the concepts and then they do sample questions, and I would just follow along. Second interview was technical. Half of it was verbal questions, and then the other half was on the computer and you code in front of them live. The verbal questions were so much harder than the coding, like exponentially harder. And I'm the kind of person that when I have a computer science test coming up, I don't just practice coding. I also try to like make sure I know the answer by hand, because there's just a little bit of like, I feel like it's a different part of the brain sometimes. So I make sure that I can code the problem, but I can also write the problem down. But I did not think of verbalizing the problem. I don't know why that did not even come into my mind. So I remember being asked questions that I should have known, like questions pertaining to my resume, because my resume had a lot of machine learning projects that I had worked on, and they asked me like really basic questions. I think like, what was this question again? I don't even remember what the question was, child, but it was a very basic machine learning question, and my brain blanked, and then I was like, oh, you know? And I feel like usually I don't think that's a bad thing, but a little bit more preparation would have helped with that, for sure. Finished that interview, and then a couple days later, I got an email saying that I've been advanced to the final set of interviews. So the final interview is a group matching phase. I had to interview with 4 members of a team that was sponsoring one of the projects for the Extreme Blue internship. If they felt like I was a good candidate for their team, they would hire me. And if not, I would interview with another team until one picked me up or none of them picked me up. And if none of them picked me up, then I wouldn't have got the job. Luckily, I interviewed with them, and within like, I think the next morning, they let me know that I was gonna be hired. I think it was February 2nd. No, I interviewed on February 1st, And February 2nd, I was informed that I had gotten the internship. I can't tell you guys exactly the questions that I was asked because they're very specific to the project that I was working on. But what I forgot to mention was that once I advanced from the second stage of the interviews to the third stage, they sent me a document that was an outline of the project for the team that I was going to be matching with. That document, I studied it like a book. I mean, when I say studied, this computer right here, I literally just went on the web and I wanted to make sure that I knew everything about everything. Like I wanted to make sure I knew as much about what was in there because there was a lot of new terms. My project was AI business automation related. A lot of it was very new to me. The last thing I wanted to do was go into this interview and look not prepared, especially having a little bit of issue articulating myself in the second interviews. So I made sure to just really study that hard. And when I went into the interviews, they were generally asking me questions about what ideas I had for the team. So if you were hired to the team and this was a problem that we had, how would you approach that problem? This interview, of all the interviews, was the one that challenged me to be more critical and more creative, really tested my communication skills. And yeah, that was the interview. And so as of February 2nd, I was offered an internship with the Extreme Blue program. One of the best experiences. I would go into all the details about my IBM internship, but that would be a whole video on its own. And I also want you guys to interact with me in a Q&A video. I'm gonna leave a Google form in the comments. Go look, it'll be pinned, and you can just submit a question that you might have. And you can also head to my Instagram. I'll do a question and answer in my story there too. I'll just pull all the questions that I have, film a video for you guys, and answer any questions that may have gone unanswered in this video. I really hope you guys learned a thing or two. You definitely can land jobs at big tech companies even without referrals or being recruited by HR. Be sure to submit your questions in the Google form. Follow me on all my socials and subscribe to this channel. I appreciate you all. I appreciate all the people that I was with at IBM. You guys were amazing, and I will catch you guys in my next one.